Yo, what's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us here on the podcast. This is the LVTV Podcast. So this is the first podcast. We're just going to have some fun today. And I have a very special guest. And I figure out of all the people I rock with just in my tight knit circle and I was thinking about this podcast, I wanted to make sure that I had someone who, that's the homie, so brother from another mother, but also someone who can bring some value for today's conversation. So before we get into how to get clients, before we talk about how to produce super dope content, before we talk about how to make money, one thing I want to start this podcast off is make sure we start off right, making sure our mental and our emotional health is dope, because sometimes as coaches and consultants, we can be so focused on profit. We can be so focused on some things that we just don't take care of ourselves. We're trying to hit that next number. We got another goal, 6-figure months and all whatever you do, but want to make sure that your mental health is tight. So I'm about to bring in a very special guest. We'll get to know him here in just a second as we are using such a dope opportunity. Let's just go ahead and do this right now. Let's bring him on in to the conversation. Mr. Richard Taylor Jr. What's up, bruh?
Happy Mary, brother. What's up?
So as y'all
it's
can
only
see,
right that I come on like this.
Man, as y'all can see, we are recording this a little early. You guys will get this. You're watching it January 2021, so we made it through another year. So
hey, brother, time out though, because knowing me, you might be watching this in January, and I still got this joker on. You just never know, man. You never know.
Never know, man. So, Richard, real quick, man, I just want to say thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise.
Absolutely.
As we really talk to coaches and consultants. And number one, make sure that our mental and our emotional health is super dope. And you got a book that's coming out, and it kind of like I didn't even think about this as much as I know about the book, that there's a chapter in the book that really speaks to this anyway.
To
so
this very thing.
So real quick, Rich, when did you know, before we get into bios, like people can check you out, find out background stuff, but let's get straight into it. When did you know that entrepreneurs, coaches, and consultants like really needed to pay attention to their mental health?
Man, I think for me, great question. I would honestly say that I knew back in 2011, which was 2012, which was 2012 was my first full year as an entrepreneur. I knew then, but I knew it from more of a selfish standpoint. I knew that I was struggling. I think after I came out on the other side of my struggle, that's when I kind of realized, like, man, like this is a real thing. And then obviously, I would say with the wave of 2017, 18, 19, and then of course leading into COVID, those are the years where I really started kind of piecing things together to try and help, entrepreneurs and, coaches, people in all forms of running their own business, whatever that might look like. And it came from like legit personal experience, man. I think I took a deeper look at it though when 2017 hit, which is when I literally packed my life up, left Chicago, moved out to Seattle. Now, granted, by this time, I had clients. I had been strong in business for about 5 years. I kind of, laid some groundwork. But it was funny, even moving to a brand new space, which in this space, I have a lot of clients. Man, it's hit or miss, it's ebb and flow. And it was in that ebb and flow where I realized, like, man, like you need to start practicing some things now that can help you so that you don't relive 2012 as you embark upon this new space.
Yeah. So I love how you talked about, gave us a really good snapshot, right? So you've been doing this for a minute. So you're not a fly-by-night entrepreneur, right? You've been doing this for a minute.
You got skin in the game, baby.
Yeah, man, because I think, as entrepreneurs, man, we have sometimes a harder track than just punching the clock 40 hours a week and going home, right? And having that security. So let's speak to that, man. Let's speak to that person, or that situation. Like, how can we be healthy mentally and emotionally when, if we don't hunt, we don't eat?
Yeah, I think that, that's real. And I think one of the things that I think about early on is expectations, right? Like, because this is where I was like, man, I'm going to be completely honest with you, LV. I remember when I first started, like, I'm not going to say I thought it was going to be a cakewalk, but as talented and as gifted as I am, I thought that was going to be enough to get me into the rooms and into the spaces and at the tables, without being able to show said talent and gifts, right? And so what I found myself doing early was kind of having this idea. So you mentioned new book. I'm gonna take my hat off so we can get, new 2021 Richard in here. Just cut the hair. But with that being said, though, if I'm being honest with you, man, 7 books, once this new one drops, right? And with the first book, I was like, this Joker's going to be a New York Times bestseller. I'm going to get so many buys. But before I do that, though, I'm going to build this huge base of fans and family and friends that are going to support. And it's going to just cause me to be able to make a little bit of money so that I can keep my lights on, right? And that didn't happen, right? Like, I thought the fact that I finished the product of the book was going to be enough for people to support, but it wasn't. And so expectations are so huge when we talk about taking care of our mental and emotional health as entrepreneurs, because a lot of times I'm big on planning, goal setting, dreaming big. Yes. But at the same time, I'm also big on those SMART goals that says, how do we get from point A to point B to B, C, and everything beyond that, right? Like, we need those small baby steps in between that will get us to that next spot. And I didn't have that. So I got very frustrated very early on because my expectation was that even though people in the world don't know me yet, I got a good circle of family and friends that's like, when you do X, Y, and Z, make sure you let me know because I'm a support. Right. And then when I let them know, they didn't.
So, yeah,
right. And so I was frustrated. Go ahead.
Let me jump in that, because let's talk about that frustration, right? Because here's the piece that I think is extremely important for especially those new coaches and consultants and entrepreneurs who are launching their client-based businesses, right? So many times when we start something, we think our family and our friends are supposed to support.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, they're supposed to pay our bills off of their financial support when you start, right? So can you talk to that aspect of expectation? Like, how do we...
So this is twofold. This is twofold. I did a podcast episode on this not too long ago, but I talked about this, right? One part is the expectation. The other part is kind of like, hey, we do have to kind of take a look at supporting our people, right? And so here's the thing for me. I was frustrated specifically because of the fact that the very people that, one, either said they wanted to support me, or two, were the ones that encouraged me to go after the dream, weren't there once the dream was actually in this space, right? And I'm like, bro, like, you said you was going, and so I was mad, but the frustration swiftly moved into sadness, bitterness, and then I think over a period of time, a nice little slump of depression, to the point where I was so bitter that I started like building. I was gassing my accomplishments up way more just to throw it in their face to say, this is what I'm doing. And once I finally did start making strides, just throwing it in their face, man. But it's crazy now looking back at that like 9 years ago and realizing that, the truth be told, people who have grown up with you or around you or knew you in past seasons won't be able to appreciate the blossoming that is taking place, the birth of this new you, or you walking into your greater purpose, your greater calling, your greater responsibility. It is going to be very hard for them to see you like that. And so it's actually helped me to understand more now that the reality is that it's the strangers. It's those that you don't know that need your gift.
Yes.
Because those that you do can't do it. Like, you got to think about it, bro. Like, I mean, I know they say dance to who you came, to the ball with, but the reality is that a lot of times, man, those people aren't going to be able to help you when it comes to moving forward. You need people who are going to be excited about what you have to bring, that don't know your story, right, that didn't walk through the trenches with you. Right. And so it shifted my thought process. Now, this is now, but man, during that time, like I said, I was bitter, I was hurt, I was angry. And I mean, it pulled me into a deeper space of depression, which is what we see with a lot of our entrepreneurs now, right? Yeah. They get on Facebook, or they get on social media, on Instagram or TikTok, and we making content specifically from our hurt and pain of what's not happening with support to help people. I'm putting this out there because folks need to hear this. And the reality is, like, bro, you got to deal with that in your heart. Sis, you got to deal with that in your heart.
You getting one off on us real quick.
Yeah.
And I especially when, you talking that talk, sometimes you got to be real careful where you come from.
Yeah.
What place you come from. So I want to ask you this question based on, let's talk to the person who, coaches and consultants. That's what we talk about here, the entrepreneurs, right? And they are successful. They are full-time entrepreneurs. And, sometimes, we can chase the expectation that we should be getting all this money, right?
Yeah.
You should be getting 6-figure months. And that's cool. You should, if you can, right? And if you have the right system and that's what your business says that you can do. So talk to that, right? That expectation of chasing a number, like how that could be, a not so much of a good thing, right? Like being hard, and how that can affect your mental and emotional health.
Facts. And I think so, man, it goes back to relationship first and foremost, right? I'm a relational person. I think we all are. We've all been created to be relational beings, but I think that a lot of times we misconstrue and confuse numbers with relationships. And we've got to be very, very careful, specifically as coaches, as individuals working with clients and, many different fields. One of the things that we've got to remember is that it is not about the numbers. The numbers are going to come. That stuff will be there. It's fine. But the reality is that many times we miss the individual that will produce the number. Right. And that doesn't come through a quick one-off. It doesn't come with an elevator pitch. It actually comes with two things. The first is being able to meet them where they are. And then after we meet them where they are, we show them through the relationship that we've got a supply for the demand that they might have. But many times we overlook that. So I would say this: sometimes we cause a cycle of anxiety, depression, sadness, and frustration on our own to ourselves. And we've got to be very careful with this, because then going back to that first point that I gave, expectations, right?
Right.
We've got to start looking at this thing from a different lens that says, well, instead of me going this route and thinking that this is how I approach it, maybe I need to pull back from the numbers because they will come. But how do I get somebody to believe in what I'm presenting that will bring those numbers later on?
Yeah.
And getting into a point of doing that will help us to essentially avoid the frustration, avoid the depression that comes with, well, man, nobody's supporting me. Not realizing that it's not that you're trash. It's not that you don't bring something to the table. It's just that people don't know what you bring to the table, because we focus on the number aspect. It's kind of like the movie Click with Adam Sandler.
Yes.
That entire movie, the idea of it was he kept fast forwarding through life, trying to get past all of the hard things, the ugly, just to get to the good moment, right? Just to get to the highlight. And once he finally got to the highlight, he realized that he gained all of this success, but he lost his family in the process. He lost his marriage in the process. He lost so many things internally. He lost relationships, honestly, LV.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to focus on, is how do I build sustainability that is going to cause the numbers to come in?
Yeah, because one of the things that, because every coach and consultant should have a coach and consultant. And for me,
facts.
My people tell me, like, it's called that inner work. Like, you got to do that inner work before, because people not buying because you're not confident in what you're selling. Right. And you got this burnout, and that's something we can probably touch on, because we have to have.
Oh, absolutely.
Before because we don't want to be too long, man. Want to, give people an opportunity. If they want to follow you, they can. We'll talk about that later. But, you got to do that inner work. So let's talk about a little bit of that. Like, and if you have some tips, some tricks, some things that we can do to really work on our own inner work, that mental and emotional health, to really run this marathon, which is entrepreneurship, which is serving people, because serving people is not always easy.
Absolutely not.
Up throwing some clothes and serve people and go back to bed. It's actually some work in it. So speak to that. Like, what are some of the three, if you got 2 or 3 things that we can do to really work on who we are on the inside to maintain and get, a healthy mental and emotional health?
Well, I think the first thing that we got to do, man, is really map out a plan, right? And understand that that plan can change at any moment in time, right? Going back to the expectation piece, mapping out a plan will help us. So even if the expectation isn't met, we do have some kind of groundwork to work with as we move forward. I would also encourage listeners to make sure that they are paying attention to their mental and emotional health, which essentially means ahead of time, right? Before problems come, before issues arise, right? Understanding, how you work in high stress environments, understanding how you work in moments of anxiety, right? When you feel super anxious, when you are on a call with a client and they ask for your fee and you want to tell them a big number, but you're afraid to. How do you work in those moments under pressure that will cause you to look back later on and kick yourself if you didn't do or say, something that you should have, right? These things are important. What are your triggers, right? Like, are you triggered when it comes to the idea that, like, I got my back against the wall, I need to make something out of nothing because I have nothing right now, right? Like, these things are really important, because I think if you strip the title of entrepreneur away, what you still have is a human being, right? And I want to kind of reference this new book real quick. The first chapter in there, it's called "We All Have a Mental Health," right? And so with that being the case, this idea that we all have a mental health, our mental health don't care about what we doing work wise. Our mental health doesn't care about our title. It doesn't care about positions and labels, right? Like, it's no respective person. We all have it. Doesn't mean we all have mental health issues, but if we're not taking care of ourselves, kind of like our physical health, issues can arise, right? And so I think that it's so important for us to just keep this in the front of our minds while we're working and while we're doing what we're doing, because the truth is that if we can do that, what we can do is start being more self-aware in advance, right? Before we get into these spaces. That would be the next thing I would encourage. And then, man, I think too, one of the things that we've got to do, and I talk about this in the 31 Days of Power book, is that we as entrepreneurs have got to take off these masks that we wear, making it seem like we got it all together, making it seem like we don't need no help, or, putting on this I get it. We got to market, we got to sell, right? And I've heard people say it time and time again. What's the famous quote that we use? Fake it till you make it, right? And then unfortunately, though, we embody that to the point where we are faking it and don't realize that we're not making it as we fake it. Right. And so I want to challenge that notion of fake it till you make it, from a standpoint of, while you're faking, are you still taking care of yourself behind the scenes? Are you still self-aware behind the scenes? And this is going to be so important for us, because if we can do this, what we will do is not allow our faking to make us think that we're something that we're not. And then in return, this mental space of frustration, sadness, depression, and we're wearing a mask, but we're too deep in to really say, hey, I need help, or hey, what did you say? Every coach needs a coach, every mentor needs a mentor, every therapist needs a therapist. And so we get so prideful, right, and ego driven, because from the standpoint of marketing ourselves in confidence and sometimes faking it, what we've really done is cause ourselves to believing that, well, man, I'm too deep in now to ask for help. And that's not the case. That is not the case.
Yeah. I love that. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about the book as we get close to wrapping up here. So let's talk about it, man. Because, I tell people, that fear, pride, unbelief, self-absorbed shows up, and it changes clothes for every occasion. So whatever the occasion, they're going to put on them new clothes and they're going to come party with you, right? I always tell people, especially when they're trying to grow an audience, they're trying to grow a business, if you don't deal with who you are on the inside, you will show up and they will rob you. I was just doing a call with someone, and I was telling them, I said, bro, if I was to walk up to you and punch you in your face, you're probably going to punch me back, right? There's probably going to be some scuffle, something. You're not going to be like, oh my God, you punched me in the face, right? You probably won't even turn the other cheek, right? So, but I said, every day when we in our businesses, when we grow on our social media platforms, we allow fear, We allow
Mhm.
doubt, pride, self-absorbed to punch us and beat us up and slap us around, right? So as we
Oh
get
yeah.
wrapping this up, man, I want to know what would you say to help that coach and consult, whether they're making six figures in their business or not, whether they got 100,000 followers on Instagram or they got 1,000 on Instagram
Mhm.
crossed over. What can you say to them to really help them deal with that inner work that has to happen? Like how do we overcome that fear, that doubt, that unbelief that keeps robbing us of being great?
I think one of the things that we got to do is remember that fear is inevitable when it comes to this work, because as an entrepreneur, as a coach, as an individual that will be working with clients, as a consultant, no matter what your title or work is under the realm of entrepreneurship, the reality is that the work that you're doing, the field is uncertain when it comes to where your next is coming from, right? You don't necessarily know, but I think when we talk about overcoming the fear and the doubt, we've got to understand that everything that we do is a supply for a demand that exists. We just got to get within the right circle.
Mm.
And so I think, one of the things that we fail at miserably is just putting work out there without having a true understanding of who needs it. The reason why I'm saying this is because when we do this, fear becomes even more inevitable because of the fact that we haven't targeted who needs what we have. That fear is going to diminish every time you see a transaction, every time you get a new coaching client, every time you get you gonna feel like you on a roll, right? It's kind of like playing in any kind of sport game, right? What happens? Momentum can swing in an instant depending on what takes place.
Yeah.
And for us as coaches and clients, this is what we've got to remember, right? We deal and we overcome the fear, we overcome anxiety, and we overcome all of the doubt and the imposter syndrome that comes with this by being mindful of the fact that we have got to make sure that we are completely zoned in when it comes to start to finish with our work, our product, what we're bringing to the table, what we're bringing to our clients, how it's going to help them. Fear is usually dispelled through our confidence. Our confidence will always be built when it comes to us having proper planning before we step into the space. And this is where we fail as entrepreneurs as a whole, coach, consultant, speaker, writer, whatever you might be, brand as far as ideology, unfortunately, a lot of times that cripples us. And that ideology a lot of times flows around the fact that we're so excited about what we're bringing to the table, but we haven't mapped out a true plan as to how and the who's we need to get this to. Yeah. And I think when we do that, man, what happens is that plan gives us just a little bit more of a security blanket of confidence as we move forward. This is how we combat the doubt. This is how we combat the fear. And then, of course, too, man, sometimes you just got to remind yourself, like, everything that I've done, my story, my work, my experience, it has a value and people need this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so even if you got to tell yourself you was kind, you was smart, you was important, like whatever you need, man, gas yourself up and remember you are that dude. You are that.
You used to be popular. You remember. You used to be popular.
That's the thing, man. And I think too, man, like one of the things that we don't do enough of in this field of work is because you think about it, coaching and consultants, a lot of times we're taking lived experience.
Yes.
And we're taking that lived experience and pouring it into other people. You are the expert of your own experience. Be the expert with your experience. Remember what you went through and let that be your driving force as you go through it.
Yeah. You know what? I got the book already sent to the editors by now, but I could have added that into one of the chapters. But we're not going to talk about mine. Let's talk about your book as we end this up, man. I want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for coming in.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me, bro.
Oh man, you already know, bro. I had to have you on as the first guest, man. I wasn't gonna start recording this podcast until I knew I could get you as number one. So appreciate that.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Secondly, let's talk about this book, man. 31 Days, right? So how can we get the book and talk us a little bit about that as we wrap up?
31 Days of Power will be available only on my website, richardtaylorjr.com. Print copies will be. The ebook copies will be available on Kindle, on the Nook. You'll be able to get it at Barnes and Nobles and stuff like that. But man, we're trying to create powerhouses out here, which means that we got to keep everything in house, right? So richardtaylorjr.com, that's where you find the 31 Days of Power. It is a simplified approach to mental and emotional health. And so this book is going to be dope. It's going to cover so many different conversations and real life experiences that we go through that can cause us to struggle in mental health, right? So we're talking about, traumas, triggers for those who work in helping other people, which coaches and clients do. Sometimes we're taking on what in the mental health realm is known as vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, right? As we are helping people, we're learning about their stories. And sometimes we're taking that in and doesn't even realize how we'll be talking a lot about, obviously, the entrepreneurship piece, how we as entrepreneurs take care of ourselves. Man, the conversations are endless. Divorce and mental health, how to work with a spouse or a partner that's struggling with like this thing, man. I'm believing that it is going to be a breakthrough for people. And the reality is that I already know that with these 31 days, and I got to shout LV out on this because this book actually came from the series that you and I did during Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May, with these 31 days. And we had these different conversation points. And there were days where I was like, yeah, bro, I don't think I'm gonna do anything today. Yeah. Or I think I might just use this as a rest day. And LV is like always like, yo, like you saving somebody's life and you need to make sure that you get on it. Right. Like, so we need something for today. And so, I mean, man, you didn't gas me up. You made me believe in it. And I'm understanding that not every chapter is going to be for everybody. Right. But man, like you can't put a dollar sign on that one chapter or two chapters that might be for you that is going to literally shift the trajectory of how you approach your mental health and how you approach your life and whatever that situation might be for you.
Man, listen, that's right there. richardtaylorjr.com. Make sure you guys pick that up. Make sure you support him, man. I think it's going to be worth it. And I'm going to be real. He is one of the driving forces behind me writing my book. He's my book writing coach from A to Z. I can't wait to have the information for you guys to buy and purchase that book. But real quick, before we get up out of here, you can reach him at richardtaylorjr.com. What about your IG and your Facebook? How can we connect with you?
Instagram, Richard.Taylor Jr. Facebook and LinkedIn is Richard L. Taylor Jr. And then Twitter is @TrulyTaylorMade. You can also catch me on my podcast weekly, the Between the Dream podcast, and that is available everywhere podcasts can be heard.
Yeah. So listen, same here. Wherever you can listen to this podcast, make sure you subscribe to it so you don't miss any of your episodes, because we're going to continue to bring guests on that are an expert in their field to help us as client-based businesses, where our clients are our thing, where we help people. So we want to make sure that you get this information to you, and you'll have some information where you can join our text club. So we do have a text club, so you can, we'll have that set up here in the show notes as well. So thank you, Richard, for joining us today. Again, this is the LVTV podcast, all things content, all things clients, cash flow for profit and impact. Focus coaches and consignors. So if you're focused on making that bread, but also making an impact, this is the podcast for you. So with that being said, you guys have a good one, and we'll see you on the next episode. Holla.